as careful as we can, not only in the way we are going about executing our air campaign, but in the type of armament we're using. We're using the appropriate weapon against the appropriate targets. We're being very, very careful in our direction of attacks to avoid damage of any kind to civilian installations. It's going to happen. It is absolutely going to happen. There's no question about it. But we're doing everything we can to prevent it. And that's not carpet bombing by any definition.
But you're using B-52s in Kuwait, are you?
I'm not going to comment on where we're using B-52s or what targets we're using them against.
Look, sir.
Yes, sir.
Given the 11 days or so of the air war, could you give us an assessment of what that air campaign has done to the Iraqi army?
To the Iraqi armed forces, it's done exactly what we intended it to do to date, and I wouldn't just limit it to the Army. I'd include the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. I would tell you that later on I hope to give you a much more detailed briefing on this where I can give you a lot more information than I'm prepared to give you right now. Yes, sir.
General, last week you told us that you had neutralized Iraq's nuclear capability and that you were going after the chemical and biological capabilities. How far have you gone?
Just to make absolutely sure that we're correct, what we said, I believe, is we have neutralized their manufacturing capability, their nuclear manufacturing capability. I could never say that there is no such thing as a nuclear weapon, although I think that most analysts of us have said there is not. But what we in fact said was we had eliminated their manufacturing capability, and I would tell you we're continuing to do exactly the same thing with the chemical and biological capability. We're making sure that it'll be a very, very long time before they'll have the capability to build that type of weapon again. Yes, all the way in the back.
A quick question, a quick technical question. If you blow the manifold up, does that mean that oil then pumps onto the ground in that part of the country?
I already told you I am definitely not an oil field technician.
Second question is there's been film from Iraqi television of a mass being held in the ruins of a church that I think has been shown on CNN. It seems to have been that the church was bombed. Do you know anything about that? Or?
I know absolutely nothing about it. I'll just reiterate what I've said. You know, these things happen. I've been bombed by our own Air Force. I don't think they did it intentionally. I really don't mean to make a joke out of this. I really don't. But you have to understand that bomb racks get hung up and dropped. And I was bombed by B-52s one time in Vietnam in Mang Yang Pass. They were coming towards us. They did a marvelous job of dropping all their bombs. Then one rack hung up, and it released over my position. And I certainly never went back and said, why did you do that? I'm angry at you. I know you did it deliberately. I will state once again, we are absolutely doing more than we ever have, and I think any nation has in the history of warfare, to use our technology. And I need to point this out, and everybody should clearly understand this. We are probably endangering our pilots more than they would otherwise be endangered by following this course of action. This is something that hasn't been stated. But by requiring that the pilots fly in a certain direction of flight or use a certain type of munition that requires them to go to altitudes that they normally wouldn't be required to go to, those pilots are at much more risk than they would be otherwise. But we have deliberately decided to do this in order to avoid unnecessary civilian casualties, in order to avoid destroying these religious shrines and that sort of thing. And I think we should be pretty, trying to clean up my act, pretty proud of the young men who are out there willing to do that in order to minimize damage of this nature. Sure.
When the facility containing I believe it was biological weapons was hit, the Iraqis made a big point of saying that this was a facility that was manufacturing baby milk, baby formula. Mm-hmm. And when General Powell came on, he said that in the back of that was facilities for biological warfare. Do you expect more of that kind of thing to be happening, because the charge has been made that a lot of these kinds of things are happening in civilian facilities? I mean, is Saddam Hussein, in your view, placing these things in civilian facilities, and are you inevitably going to end up bombing civilian facilities, going after military?
No, I will tell you quite candidly that there are several almost predominantly civilian facilities right now that I would like very much to attack. because I know for a fact they're being used by the Iraqis, and we're not doing it for that reason. We knew, in fact, that this particular facility that we attacked was, in fact, what it was. We also used very precision munitions on it to make sure that we destroyed that part of it. As General Powell said the other day, it's surrounded by a high military fence. It has guard posts on all four corners, and it was painted with camouflage paint in December. That's not something you normally do with an infant formula plant, any more than you put the high berms up around an aspirin plant. I reject the argument that that was only a baby formula plant, but I would also clearly state that when we went after that facility, we went after it in a precision way to damage only that part of that facility that we knew or had a very, very high assurance, as given to us by the intelligence community, that it was, in fact, a research facility for biological warfare. Yeah.
Go back to the oil spill for a second. Do you not believe the Saudis' estimates that this is going to be an ecological disaster much beyond the scope of Exxon Valdez? You don't believe that?
No, I didn't say I didn't believe that. That's far beyond my level of expertise. As I say, I'm a conservationist, but I'm certainly not an ecological engineer, and I really don't have the level of expertise to comment on that.
Doesn't it play somewhere in the decision to go to war that we could be entering a situation in which we, by going to war with Saddam Hussein, would create a situation like this which could have decades-long impact on the environment? Does that not factor in?
I can see where some people might want to make that argument. I think that that is a ridiculous argument when you consider the cost of human life that the alternative might be also. I think that we could get, that's an argument that will probably be argued long after my time and long after your time, but I certainly don't accept the fact that we should not fight a despot on the basis of the fact that we might for some reason pollute ashore. And I don't take that lightly, because believe me, I'm a lover of the outdoors, I'm a lover of the environment, I'm a conservationist, but I think some great man once said there are some things worth fighting for, and I certainly believe that also. Over here, we had a question.
I just want to follow up on your precision munitions answer, and we know a lot of these pilots have taken terrible risks in completing difficult missions. And this may be a false assumption, but I've got a mental image of a B-52 at very high altitude dropping gravity bombs. I know they have cruise missiles aboard. I'm just pressing you once again to clear up this situation on the use of the B-52s. It's not too surgical at 30,000 feet with gravity bombs, is it?
I'm going to give you exactly the same answer I gave you before. That's I'm not going to say.
I thought I'd try.
Yes, sir.
I just would like to know, how do you characterize the role of the